We can also create, and this is quite natty if you're used to using Excel and you've probably used pivot tables before, we can create pivot tables really easily in Pandas. And I will point out far, far more computationally efficiently than in Excel, particularly for the large kind of data sets you'll be using. Again, just to hammer home this point, the resultant pivot tables that you create will themselves also be Pandas data frames, and so you can manipulate and work with those pivot tables in exactly the same way as with any other Pandas data frame. So let's imagine for our data frame, we want to look at the average age by county. Okay, really easy to do this. Again, single line of code. I'll just spread it over 4 lines so I don't go over my 80 characters. And here I just say pd.pivottable, and then within that I've passed in 4 arguments. I've said data equals and then the name of my data frame. So that's the data of the name of the data frame I want to create the pivot table from. The column that we want to use as the index, which in this case is county, because we want to look at age by county. The values upon which we want to look at the other side of the pivot, and what we call the ag function, which is basically what kind of information do I want back. So here I want to look at average. So this is looking at the mean age by county. This says give me the mean. The values I want you to take the mean of are the age, and I want that by county, and I want it in this data frame. That 1 line of code will generate this pivot table here, which, as I say, is in itself a data frame, and it tells us the average age in Cornwall is 60. Cornwall and Devon is almost identical, whereas Somerset seems to be a bit younger in this completely made-up data set. You'll also notice, and I keep mentioning it, this is in itself a data frame, this pivot table. You'll see now that county is now the index for this data frame. So the pivot table data frame, the index is county, and that should make sense. We told it that's what we wanted the index to be. So because the pivot table is in itself a data frame, we can do exactly the same with the pivot table that we can do with any other data frame, including the data frame that we used to generate the pivot table. So we could, for example, retrieve the mean for Cornwall just by specifying the index. Remember, county in this data frame, the pivot table, is county is now the index. So I can give the .lock command. I can provide Cornwall as the index, and it'll return the entry for Cornwall. You probably want, if you're doing a pivot table in earnest, you probably want to have more than one point of comparison. And to do that, it's really easy. You just pass in your values as a list. You're probably getting the hang of this pattern now. But if I wanted to look at, for example, average age and average number of emissions by county, I just pass in age and number of emissions as a list to the values argument.